A sudden slice of summer. The snow began to fall early this year, in November, before Susanna even had a chance to bring her puffed up purple winter coat out of the closet. It did not stop. Cold white confetti came down on the city of Montreal morning, noon, and night, and already Susanna was wondering when the party would end. The other kids in her class loved the snow. They loved that sometimes, when the wind picks up and the roads turned icy, school was canceled. They liked to build towering forts and snowmen, whose noses were the carrot sticks they found packed in their lunch boxes. Susanna despised the snow. More than that, she hated everything about winter time. Her family had taken a trip to Florida 2 winters ago, and she wished that they could live there all year round. She had bobbed up and down in the ocean waves, sometimes floating on her back and other times, with goggles on, searching for colored fish in the water. In the mornings, her mother had squeezed fresh juice from the Florida-grown oranges that the hotel left in a basket at the front desk. With her brother and sister, Susanna had constructed a magnificent castle on the beach, with a moat and a long, looping flight of stairs. She liked feeling the sand between her fingers. It stuck together every bit as well as snow did, and it didn't make your teeth chatter. At the end of this week, Susanna's family was going to drive an hour north to the ski hill. They would spend Saturday there, riding chairlifts to the top of a frosted mountain and following the slopes back down. Susanna refused to go with them. She wanted nothing to do with that white, thick, powdery stuff. It was bad enough that she had to trudge through it every day on her way to Sunnydale Elementary. Arrangements had been made. Grandma was coming to the house to look after her. She was determined to stay warm and dry. There were packets of hot cocoa in the pantry. Susanna's parents finished packing up the car. Her siblings, who had been throwing snowballs into the air and at each other, piled into the back seat. Soon the station wagon disappeared from view, and Grandma settled into an armchair in front of the television. In a few quick minutes she was asleep. Susanna glanced outside and gave a sigh. Her hot chocolate was just about gone. She was about to turn towards the sink to rinse her mug when out of the corner of her eye she caught something green. Something green? In her blank white backyard? She pressed her face up against the kitchen window. There, in the corner of the yard closest to the sliding back door, the snow had melted away. In its place, a small tree with low-hanging fruit was growing. Susanna immediately ran out to it. Elsewhere, the snowy flakes continued to swirl, but not a single one landed on this bright patch of ground, which was covered in sand. The sun beamed down on Susanna so hard, in fact, that she was hot, sweating hot. Half buried by her feet were a plastic shovel and pail. She couldn't believe it. A small slice of the tropical holiday she had been missing had landed right behind her house. She ran inside for her bathing suit. For the next few hours, while Grandma lay dozing, Susanna sprawled out on her own little beach. At first, she could not stop smiling. She giddily stretched out her limbs and moved them back and forth, making a snow angel. No, a sand angel. She read a bit of a book. She picked a few oranges and unpeeled them one by one. She dug holes and then filled them in again. After that, she didn't quite know what to do. Apparently, the pleasures of the warm sand beach were a lot less fun when there was no one around to share them with. Susanna would have woken her grandmother, but she remembered that Grandma didn't care much for the sun. She had spent the family's entire Florida vacation under both an umbrella and huge brimmed hat. Besides, the sunny space wasn't big enough for two. By late afternoon, Savannah wasn't feeling very well. Her mother hadn't been around to lather her in suntan lotion, and her skin had turned a very dark shade of pink. She'd eaten so many sickly sweet oranges that she now had stomachache. She had gotten some sand in her eye and had to blink furiously to get it out. The sun was strong and unrelenting. She glanced over to the other side of the yard. She was reluctant to admit it, even to herself, but the snow looked sort of refreshing. She imagined racing her siblings to the bottom of that frosted mountain. Perhaps skiing with her family wouldn't have been so terrible. She was flushed and bored, but most of all, she missed them. She trudged inside, showered the sweat and sand off of her body, and then joined her grandma, who was finally awoken, at the table. "My dear, however did you manage to get that awful sunburn?" her grandmother wailed. Susanna just shrugged. She wasn't very hungry, but she managed to pack in some forkfuls of spaghetti and 3 meatballs. Before bed, she crept over to the back door and peered out. The sand, the tree, the bucket, all were gone. Susanna began to think that she had imagined it. She wasn't that disappointed. Her brother and sister would be back in the morning, and she badly wanted to play with them, even if it meant being chilly. The car pulled into the driveway. Susanna was up with a start, and she charged downstairs. She welcomed both her parents home with hugs and gave one to her grandmother, too, who was preparing to leave. Then, as her mother began to ready breakfast, she pulled on her snowsuit and joined her siblings in the back. They were sculpting animals, a caterpillar with snowy lumps for a body, a fish with a three-dimensional fin, and they were surprised to see her there. She dropped to her knees without explanation and began to work. Her hat was pulled low over her ears, her mittens were lined with wool, and suddenly her sister's hand was over hers, helping to smooth out the fish's curved tail. She could wait for summer. She was warm enough.